If you've ever been tricked into making a bargain with a nice old lady that just so happens to live in a shack in the middle of a swamp and it has chicken legs, maybe her hair's all matted with things you don't want to identify, her fingers are too long and her nails are all blackened and curved, she's got that sickly green complexion covered in craters and warts and weeping sores, then you, my friend, have come across a hag. These are some of the best creatures and villains that you can have in a D&D campaign. But sometimes we just run them wrong and they die on the first encounter. You just slapped open the monster manual, flicked to the hag page and looked at the stat block and thought, this looks pretty good. But there is so much more to hags than what's written on those pages. I mean, there's thousands of years of folklore behind this creature. There's video games and novels and fairy tales that have done extraordinary things with her, like Baba Yaga and the crones of Brookback Bog, Black Annis, the witches of Macbeth. I could go on for ages with examples, but the point is that all this lore and information that we could be using to enhance our games is just sitting there ripe for the picking. And that's exactly what we're going to break down in this video. We're going to take a look at where these legendary creatures actually come from, the other adaptations that have been done brilliantly, unique things that they did that you can use at your table, and then we're going to look at some common problems that you might come across and how to fix them. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of running hags, we need to know what a hag is, what they want, what they desire, where they came from. All these pieces come together and they could give you an entire campaign's worth of information. So in D&D lore and the folklore that it actually comes from, hags are what I'd call the anti-mother. The mother archetype represents creation and nurturing and warmth and life, and the hag is the dark mirror of all of that stuff. They represent death and consumption and corruption. They're basically yin and yang. They come from the Fae. They're Fae creatures, which is important to note because the Fae don't normally operate on the logic of physics. Their logic comes from stories and emotion. It's like this. Hags don't call swamps their home because they like the smell of rot. They are the rot. They are a physical embodiment of nature's cruelty. And hags are literally obsessed with ugliness. And I don't mean the physical kind on its own, which I think they have covered. They're also obsessed with spiritual ugliness. Their reason for being is built around finding someone that's pure, like a noble knight or a kind priest, or a loving young couple, and proving through whatever means they can that under the right pressure, they are just as selfish and petty and cruel as she is. And to put things bluntly, I guess you could just say that they're extremely evil, swamp-dwelling philosophers. And they won't just eat you, they'll eat your hope, literally. They are metaphysical scavengers who thrive on irony. It's like this, yeah? If you asked a hag for beauty, they would give it to you for sure, but they would steal it off the face of your daughter. You want to be rich? Fine. She'll give you gold, but it will turn to lead the moment you try to buy bread for your starving family. And to a hag, it's more than just being cruel. It's their worldview. They genuinely believe that everyone at the end of the day deserves exactly what they ask for. And unlike other creatures that want gold or power, they want leverage. They want to be your Voldemort. They want everyone to be whispering about them, but no one dares say their name. And they feel like they're a necessary evil. They want you to go to them when the gods aren't returning your prayers. And I think it's so important to remember that a hag's goal isn't just to kill the party. It's literally all of the above. If they kill you, then none of the above is possible, is it? Basically, the D&D version is the greatest hits album of European and Slavic folklore. And what's even better is that the source material is absolutely wild and you should be plundering it constantly. Baba Yaga is the big one, the most famous hag in canon, flying around in a giant mortar and pestle, chilling in a hut that stands on chicken legs. And what I find really interesting is that she's not evil in every story. Sometimes she actually helps the hero, and other times she eats them. In these stories, she represents the wilderness, like the force of nature that genuinely doesn't care whether you live or not, which I find is an important takeaway for your table. Every conflict doesn't end with them trying to do something bad towards you. She might help the party, or she might help them straight into a trap. Either way, she's not going to lose sleep over it. Let's take a nosy at the Black Annis, the blue-faced crone from English folklore, whose claws were made of iron and they lived in a cave. Good old parents would use her as a boogeyman to keep children from wandering into the woods at night, because we all know if you tell kids not to do something, they're gonna listen, right? And this is exactly where the Annis hag in 5e draws its flavour. That raw and visceral childhood terror of something ancient and hungry that's lurking in the dark. It's some good stuff. Sorry if I butcher the name of this next one. The Graeae from Greek myth These were some creepy ass sisters who shared a single eye and a single tooth between 3 of them. And yes, I know exactly what you're thinking, from Hercules, right? But these are more of a mix between them and the Moirai, and they call them the Fates. But the actual visual is spot on. The Graeae are basically the prototype for the Coven that we use today. They were 3 women who shared power and vision, and the idea behind this is that the 3 hags together sharing parts are stronger than any one of them on their own. And we can't forget the witches of the Brothers Grimm. You know, the gingerbread house. The hag makes something so inviting that people can't resist but just to waltz in on their own volition. And that is a rule that I will always stick by, that you need to carry that energy with whatever hag you make. And another important thing to always remember is that hags follow rules. If you want a visual example of this, the Witcher series has Baba Yaga in it, and her hut won't be shown to you until you say the right phrase. She is also bound by any promise that she makes, and she will never volunteer that information. Other cool interesting things is that her plants and animals and objects that are in her house, if she doesn't look after them, they'll turn against her and help the victims escape. I find it's these little details that can make or break an arc with a hag. Now let's take a look at the variety of hags we get in D&D. You have your green hag, which is the classic traditional witch. These are the master of illusions and social manipulation. They love mimicking voices of loved ones to lure people into traps. You could call these the social hag or the con artist. These are your Auntie Ethel in Baldur's Gate 3, which we will dig into in a bit. Basically, if you want to mess with your player's head before any dice are rolled, this is your gal. The Sea Hag is the uncanny horror entry. These things are so profoundly cosmically ugly that a failed saving throw against their death glare can drop a player to 0 hit points, which is crazy. If your players don't like the sea, then this is a pretty good one. I find that the Night Hag is probably the most versatile villain in the entire game. They're not even fae, they're fiends, and they travel through the ethereal plane and ride the backs of sleeping people, literally draining your soul through nightmares. And this is their currency, their soul traders. These ladies are villains that can follow your party across an entire continent and still get into your bedrooms without picklocking it. They can have your party scratching their head for a bit and it's pretty funny. The Annis Hag on the other side is pretty physical. They're large and strong and crush bones. And they often adopt orphan children, which is as horrifying as it sounds. They represent the corruption of childhood innocence. She's the one who looks like your grandma until she doesn't. Another strange but really interesting one is the Bheur Hag. These are the winter hags. They ride a staff made of human bone and bring blizzards. They are the personification of starvation and isolation. If you're running a wilderness survival campaign and you want something that feels genuinely mythological, this one is perfect. And then we have the Coven Mechanic. When 3 hags of any type join forces, they share a pool of spells up to 6th level. You know, silly little things like Eye Bite and Scrying. This turns 3 CR3 creatures into a CR7 plus threat. They also have a shared psychic link, which is awesome in concept and has some real problems in the execution, which we will get into in a second. But basically the core idea is that these 3 hags come together to become a hive mind of malice. And yes, they are codependent, but they're exponentially more dangerous, which is exactly the kind of dynamic that makes for a great villain faction. Alright then, let's move on to the next bit, the problems that you can face at your table. The first issue is that hags can be quite weak on their own. For instance, if you put a single green hag, which is a CR3 against a level 5 party, it's gonna be over pretty quick. D&D is a game that's built around action economy, and 4 players, each taking a turn every round, will statistically obliterate most solo monsters. Even the physically powerful Annis Hag can't survive 2 rounds of a paladin unloading Divine Smite. The math just doesn't add up. If you want to run a solo hag, I can't recommend playing Baldur's Gate 3 enough. Some spoilers for the game ahead, but we're going to talk about Auntie Ethel for a bit. Firstly, her use of minions such as the redcaps in her swamp works perfectly. And then as you progress through her lair, you have the victims that are now mind controlled to be on her side, as well as other strange cursed items and trinkets that add to the flavour. But I think for this point, some of the most important stuff is how she fights. In the first encounter you have with her, she uses illusionary magic and creates duplicates of herself, making it hard to hit her and figure out which one's the real one, which then buys her a few rounds to mess the party up, you know. And then on the second encounter, she uses these mushrooms that have healing abilities. This would work great as part of her lair and could be used as like a lair action, because it was pretty much healing her for full health every time, until you start taking them out, and then it reduces the amount of healing it does every time. So the point I'm trying to make here is that if you want to use a solo hag, then these are things that you can incorporate, and you don't really have to explain what they are or why you've used them. I mean, hags have been around for centuries. They're gonna have cursed items and weird objects that can do things such as this. And if you still think this wouldn't be enough, then you could just bump her HP a little bit. There's nothing wrong with making adjustments for your players. The second issue is about the Coven mechanics. When you want to cast Coven spells, all 3 hags need to be within 30 feet of each other, which means they are perfectly clustered for a fireball. And even worse, if one of them dies, then the other 2 lose their high level spells instantly, which means that the threat level goes from deadly to pretty naff in a single turn. Let's face it, your players are going to figure this out pretty quick, and then they'll attack the weakest hag and take them out, and then the encounter's pretty much over. So the way I fix this normally is I think about where they're going to be situated rather than just all standing together because they have to be within 30 feet. You just need to spread them across the layer. For instance, one holds the entrance while another one's a bit deeper in, and then one of them's on a balcony or in a pit or behind a curtain or something. They can all still share the Coven spells as long as they're within 30 feet, but now the party have to actually find them before they can go full fireball, you know? Or better yet, make killing the first hag feel like a trap. The surviving 2 switch tactics and the layer reconfigures, and the players realize they've just made the remaining 2 very angry. Third is mobility. Once you have a hag cornered and they can't move away from your melee range, it's game over pretty quick. Unless you're running a night hag who can literally slip into the ethereal plane when she's stuck. Which just doesn't seem right that you've built this cunning ancient manipulator which ends up trading punches with a barbarian in a mud puddle. It's a pretty embarrassing turn of events. So to fix this, it's important to give them an escape hatch. Every hag should have at least one way to not be where the barbarian's axe is currently going. Like green hags have mimicry and invisible passage. You should use them. Build a trapdoor into their lair. Add a lair action that lets her teleport to a tree or into the swamp outside her hut. The Night Hag's etherealness ability is already baked into its build, so you should definitely use it aggressively and make your players feel the horror of swinging through empty air. And if she can't escape, at minimum give her a reason to retreat. And it could be something so simple like a door that she can seal behind her, or even stupid like a passage that's too small for the fighter to fit through in full plate. The fourth problem is something that happens to more than just the hags. When we prepare for our encounters and we look at the stat blocks, I feel like we get a bit of tunnel vision, and it's like the stat block is the only thing that exists, everything around it doesn't. But it's so crucial to remember that creatures like hags have been alive for like hundreds of years and have an absurd amount of cursed items and alchemical creations and stolen magical trinkets. So you shouldn't just cast whole person, you should be having her throw a pouch of paralyzing dust made from the ground up bones of a thief. The stat block is the minimum. Just take a few minutes before you play, or when you're building your encounters or your hags, and just think about what they actually would have on them. What type of unique trinkets would they have picked up over the years? What signature tricks do they have up their sleeves? Go through her lair and place at least 3 items that aren't in any rulebook, like a jar of pickled eyes that grants true sight for 1 minute but show you something you can't unsee, or a cloak stitched from the hair of women who broke their wedding vows. You can just come up with some really weird shit. These items do 2 things. They make the hag feel like a 400-year-old creature with history, which she is, and they give the players something to argue about looting afterwards. So it's win-win. The last one is pretty important, and it's something that you can do without thinking about it, which is roll an initiative too early. If your players see a hag and immediately start combat, you have already failed to use her most powerful weapon, which literally costs nothing and requires no spell slots, which is her words. A hag should always be talking, always be offering an out. You need to remind the party that the hag is more than just a monster. They're a literal obstacle that the party can't just stab their way through. There is consequences to their actions. The way I've done this in the past is by making initiative the nuclear option, for a better use of the word. You design the encounter so that rolling initiative is the worst the players can do. The hag should open every interaction with something that makes combat feel costly, like kill me and the boy in the cellar starves, or I'm the only one who knows where I've hidden the key. Go ahead, swing that sword. Let's see what my sisters think when they feel me die. Even though the players feel like they've won when they charge in head first, should feel like they've lost something. Like I said earlier, you need to make them realize that there's more to this than just winning the fight. When you engage with them, you get a genuine puzzle, something that feels like a victory earned when you solve it. The real secret to running a great hag is leverage. A hag should not be encountered in isolation. You need to weave them into the fabric of the setting before the party ever hears their name. A great example of this is the crones of Crookback Bog from Witcher 3. If you haven't witnessed what the writers have done with these hags, then you need to go check it out right now. I'll wait. The crones run something called the Trail of Treats. They lure orphan children into the swamp with food, take care of them, and then eat them. Or worse, desperate parents who can't feed their kids send them willingly. They know. That's crazy. They just don't have another option. When Geralt shows up to investigate, there's no clean answer. Save the children and the crones punish the village. Or leave it alone and the children keep disappearing. It creates such a moral knot where killing the monster solves nothing and might make everything worse. And it's precisely what a hag encounter should feel like. And the music for them? Chef's kiss. Honestly, if you need soundtracks for your games at home, you should literally just type in Witcher 3 soundtracks. There's some good shit for pretty much any situation. Another great trick is the hostage soul. Hags, especially night hags, shouldn't be trading in gold. Like I said earlier, they trade in connections. Maybe the hag has the fire's dead sister's soul in a bag. If the hag dies, the bag dissolves and the sister is gone forever. Or the hag has linked her life force to an NPC the party genuinely likes. Every point of damage the party deals to that hag, the NPC takes instead. What a conundrum. Pretty good. Gonna use that next game. Hags are also the masters of the long con. When the party first meets her, there's no way she should look like a hag. Use her illusory appearance. Make her look like something like a grandmother whose wicked sisters have taken over the swamp. She hires the party to clear them out, effectively using the heroes to kill her rivals and consolidate her own power. By the time the party realizes she's the great evil they were sent to stop, they've already done her bidding, and the look on your players' faces when they realize what you've done is priceless. And a hag shouldn't just live in the woods, they are the woods. It's their lair. Use lair actions even if she's not technically a legendary creature. The trees move to block the player's retreat, or water rises, making it difficult terrain. Or maybe once a turn or something she can swap with a tree she can see within 60 feet. You can make it almost impossible to pin down, and when the players hear their mother's voice screaming from the tree line with mimicry, they now have disadvantage on all attacks for a round because their brain is doing things they don't have a spell to fix. You need to give them that leverage to force the players to engage with her as a character. The goal is to make them feel genuinely damned if they do, and damned if they don't. And the bargain is the hag's signature move. It's literally how she wins without ever touching a spell slot, and it works because D&D players are conditioned to look for shortcuts. Let's say for instance your party's wizard wants to learn a new spell that they don't have the level for. The hag can teach them for a price, which will be his ability to sleep soundly. Mechanically, he no longer gets the benefits of a long rest. He gains power now, and the cost compounds quietly over time, like interest on a bad loan. Or maybe the hag gives them a compass of true path, which helps them navigate to their destination. It's incredibly helpful, but every time they use it, the hag gets to see through their eyes for 1 hour. She can use this to calculate their weaknesses before their inevitable confrontation. They use the compass 12 times. She has taken very detailed notes, you know. I've also done it before where I've given the players items in return for a d20 roll, which means that any roll that player makes, I can then make them re-roll that and take the worst of the two. So if it's like a life or death situation and I'm feeling particularly nasty, I can make them re-roll the d20 to save someone's life. The best way to run these bargains is to first identify what the party needs. Find out what a player is actually struggling with, like a curse or a missing person or a gap in their knowledge. And then second, offer the solution. The hag fixes it instantly and cheerfully. Of course I can find your friend dearie. Such a simple thing. And third, give them a vague cost. She never asks for gold. She asks for something that sounds worthless, like give me your last breath. And mechanically, now that player automatically fails their first death saving throw. Or it could be something like give me a shadow. Strangely, that player no longer has one, and now they take disadvantage on charisma checks against creatures with good alignment who notice. When you get a player to accept the bargain, they're not just picking up an item, they are handing the DM a plot hook to ruin their life at the most dramatically appropriate moment, which frankly is a gift. And if your players finally decide that enough is enough and they're gonna punch their way through this, the map itself should be an active threat. Hazardous terrain, not just difficult terrain but grasping mud that requires a strength save or the player is restrained, or stinking vapors that inflict the poison condition, or illusory walls the hag can walk through freely while the players run headfirst into solid stone. And the hag should definitely have bodyguards, but not the boring kind like hired mercenaries. They should have like charmed villagers or blighted plants and hag-spawn children who attack the party with tears streaming down their faces because they have no choice. And it works great because the players will be horrified realizing that you're fighting people you cannot in good conscience kill. And whenever possible, the lair should be designed to separate the party, like hallucinatory terrain. One moment they're in a ballroom or something, and then the next they're waist deep in something unpleasant. A hidden tunnel pulls the wizard away from the group, and now the hag is a CR3 creature facing a single wizard, which is a very different fight and much more interesting as well. So I think after years of running these creatures, both badly and eventually less badly, I really do feel like hags are the ultimate villains because they don't care about the rules of the game. They care about the rules of the soul. A hag who dies in round 2 is just a corpse in a swamp, but a hag who has forced the paladin to break his oath and left a permanent mark on the party's morality will be something that your players are soon going to forget, especially if you play that Witcher 3 playlist. We need to stop thinking about stuff like the stat blocks and their multi-attacks and start thinking about influence, using the folklore of Baba Yaga to give them mystery and ambivalence, and use the Coven Mechanic as a power structure the players have to understand and dismantle carefully, not just a fireball, and using bargains to plant hooks directly into the player character sheets. If you can do all that, then you've got a pretty good hag going on. So, how do you run hags? Do you do any of the stuff that I've mentioned? Did you find the video useful? If you're a player, what was your favourite hag encounter that you've had? Leave it all in the comments and let's get debating. Thank you for watching, and as always, stay spicy adventurers.